Our short interview with famed football coach Nick Saban, who was a Kent State football player at the time the events took place.
Nick, you said you might not remember the games when you were at Kent State, but when you were a freshman, there was a traumatic incident that happened with the National Guard. How did that affect you, throughout your life, and especially in coaching, how you deal with young people?
Well, I think it was probably certainly to that point in my life, one of the most traumatic experiences I think that I'd ever had to deal with. To have students on your campus shot, killed, and actually didn't see it happen, but saw the aftermath right after it happened. And it's made me have a lot of appreciation for a lot of things. It actually made me appreciate the fact that law and order is very important, but it also made me appreciate the fact of what those students were trying to express in terms of, the Vietnam War and the demonstrations that they were having, and the confrontation that occurred was unnecessary. There's a film out of it actually happening, and I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to watch it, but they had already tear gassed the crowd, broke up it was martial law, so you couldn't have a meeting. So Monday noon they had a meeting or gathering, and it was kind of over, and the National Guard was actually marching up the hill, and all of a sudden they wheeled around and fired into the crowd. So nobody could ever quite figure out how that happened. It seemed pretty unnecessary, but I had class with one of the students that were killed, Allison Krause, and I didn't know her or anything, but that well. But it was a pretty chilling experience, and something that makes you view things a little bit differently, and certainly have a much better appreciation of not taking for granted life itself. So it was. And it probably had more to do to stop the war in Vietnam than anything that happened, unfortunately. For the students. All right, thanks.
Here's Bernie Marino on abortion.
Okay, and then the PowerPoint that you're bringing up, can you just have the slides continue to scroll, and then at the end, John might say go back to a certain slide, so we're just going to have the PowerPoint going. It's not going to necessarily line up with the questions that we're asking, so if anybody sees anything they want to see, just let us know. We can go back to it, but these are just a lot of pictures that Mimi was able to gather through books that were shared from the three of them. So kind of this question loops in great with the Nick Saban comment. How did the events of May 4th impact your life in the immediate aftermath? And we'll let each of you respond to that question.
I guess I'm going. Well, I think personally I felt kind of stranded, I guess you would say, and kind of betrayed just because of the uncertainty that was happening. And this was my education, and there were classes that I really did want to take, although there were a couple that I was glad were canceled for the most part. But the other thing is I felt like I didn't have any say in anything. That, okay, we are 10-year-olds and we are being told what to do and we will obey. It just kind of did not leave a good taste in my mouth, I guess you would say. But I think the other thing it did do was those of us that were in the dorm at the time became much closer and communicated more, and learned from that the importance of communications and the importance of letting people know, putting your guard down, letting people know a little bit more about you so that you can work together and live together and a much calmer situation than what was being thrown at us that day. So I guess at the last minute I thought, any of us could have been killed that day. You know, and at that time it was like, whew, it's okay, yeah, you'll be okay. And then when you think back, you think, it could have been anybody. And some of those were very stray bullets that killed some of those students. Okay.
Are you guys able to hear her okay, or do you want me to hand my, okay. We're gonna do,
I get,
you want,
around to help fix all the electronic
let's
stuff.
give a round of applause for JD. He doesn't want to be up on stage right now. I could hear it squeaking. All right, and if not, then somebody wave at me and I'll hand her my mic. Same question. No, okay. Same question, Richard. So, how did the events of May 4th impact your life in the immediate aftermath?
In the immediate time following that, the training that came forth just for that happening, and all the guard units in the state of Ohio automatically went into this training to riot formations. It was just, everything stopped. On the guard side, what we did, and everything stopped, and it flipped over, and now we're doing all these formations. And instead of a gun, they gave us John loves this, a riot baton. And they were just a little bigger than a broom handle, twice as thick, and they were about 3 feet long. And that's what we carried from that point on. No weapons, none. And so we were training with these, which became ball bats and everything else that you could beat with them in your formations that they use. And then you're standing there with a stick, lunge. It just, we went through riot patrol training and for at least 2 years straight, once a month. At some point in time, it was the first day or the second day, everything stopped and we were in riot patrol, right, just constantly. After that, I had, it was quite different, not being actually involved right off the bat. We felt as much as confusion as everybody else did when it came back to us and said, you did this. Now we're going to train you how to do it. No training. We never had that training. So, and today, I can't tell you what the Guard's doing with it today. Not quite sure. But
Thank you.
Wonderful. Richard, that riot stick is the greatest thing, because they had no training on controlling riots prior to this encounter. So they decided, well, heck, we better start training them in doing riots. And then Richard told me about this riot stick, and I said, wow, did it have a little ball? He said, yeah, it had a little ball on the ends, so anyway. All right, so I wanted to make sure that got covered. There's another topic I hope Richard gets into as we go on, and it's about the riot gear that the guys were wearing, but we'll get into that later. How did the effects of May 4th, what happened to me? Because I had to support myself through college, all my food, everything, lodging, I paid for. So now I was out of a job because I worked downtown at the wine store. And it was closed, just like Dave was saying, everything was shut down. So I had to go home. Oh boy, did everybody was home on summer break or an extended summer break because their colleges were closed. So guess what we did? Yeah, we partied, all right? So we had a good time. But I still had no income at all. So I really had to be very careful about what I did. And I was, again, in the production mode. I said, man, I might not be able to go back, ever. So I started looking for some way to support myself, and, can't go back to college. Let's see what we do. No news was coming in. I was back at home, broke.
What was the reaction of your family and friends when they heard what had happened? Whoever wants to answer first.
I'm assuming my parents were worried and concerned about how I was coming home and how I was getting home. Like I said, the communications and the phones did not work, so you kind of had to figure that out somehow. If my mother was worried, she wouldn't have told me anyway. So that was right, John? Yeah. Wouldn't you say that? That's just not my mom. She would have not said that she was worried about me or anything else. She just always said, things will work out. It'll be okay. But like I said, I'm sure they were worried, but they would never admit that to me. So.
My mom worked for Kent. That's why I ended up leaving Ohio University, coming to Kent, because I was called a staff child. So that means that I got a lower rate of tuition and my books were cheaper and such and so. But anyway, she worked at the KSU branch in Elyria. And she knew something was going on. I could not communicate with her because of the phone system. But I think she understood that I was a survivor and she knew I was going to take care of myself. But of course, she always had this lingering thing that, John's always where the action is. So, no, I was hungover getting a burger, okay? But I would have had, if I didn't have a car, I would have had to walk that way to get back to my apartment, right through that area. Anyway, what the reaction, family and friends, everybody wanted to hear my story, and I told it, and since then I haven't told it much. This is the first time anybody's really asked me to go into detail of what I saw and experienced. I'm sure it's the same thing with Doris and Richard here. So,
one other thing that we didn't like after we were doing all this training, and everybody's familiar with Ravenna Arsenal in the state, and how close is that to Kent State, and where they send us to go to training for 2 weeks. And so we're up there, and I thought, oh, this is pretty good. Nice place up Ravenna. I like it. And then, okay, all done already? Okay, we have supper, then we turn our guys loose. We go, let's go have a beer downtown. Not good. Not good. So we had to watch, and I was telling my wife about one of the guys that was ready to go, one of my best friends, and we're getting ready to go downtown. I turn around and look, and Steve's standing there, and he's got a wig on. He's got a woman's wig on, and he's got a tie-dye shirt on. He said, I ain't wearing nothing that's got to tell somebody I'm in the guard, and I'm down here having a beer. So we had to put up with stuff like that for quite a while. I mean, people would just would look down on us terribly bad in those areas. And Ravenna was one of our main training stations that we were always in and out of. So.
Hello. I think an important thing to note is you had to go right back into your daily life with the Guard, where, Doris, you left campus, John, you left as well, you guys, and you just had to continue your service with the Guard. So very, probably traumatic for a long time after that. You didn't have any reflection time or anything. It was back in action.
There was a thing that Richard talked about. I didn't get to see because I knew the Guard was kids, a bunch of kids our age, run by a bunch of, anyway. See that? I held back, Brenda. Isn't that good? I'm impressed. Doris is impressed. Anyway, so Richard experienced stuff that I never had, and he talked a little bit about it because the Vietnam folks, If he was wearing OD green or something like that, he would tend to be called a baby killer or things like that. And there were some other terms, but I don't want to dwell on that, but I'm telling you that he had it rougher than we did, I think, even though he wasn't involved.
Yes. So the next question, how did the shooting affect your views on the Vietnam War, the government, or activism?
Sure, here we go. I started being skeptical of government motivations, why they did things. And I understood that most of the things they did were covered by two reasons. Number one is to cover their butt, and second is, can I make money at this somehow? So that's the way I'm feeling these days. Not for Doris, because, you know, she's a politician. And I am kind of too. So anyway, it affected my views of the Vietnam War. I paid more attention. I did not pay much attention to it prior to that.
I would say the same thing about the Vietnam War. I really hadn't paid too much attention, and I was a girl, you know. I wasn't going to get drafted, so, and my brother was quite a bit younger than I was, and I really hadn't worried about it or thought about it. After I got married, I probably thought about it more because my husband told me that he went to school so he didn't have to go to Vietnam. So I thought, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. I, too, have thought a little bit more about questioning the government and disagreeing maybe with some things that they might impose upon us, and have probably become more active at calling my legislator or writing letters to people in Washington about things that I really don't agree with. The other thing that we haven't really talked about is that we are looking real closely at the Kent shooting, but yet I really believe that a lot of this was brought on by outsiders. We had the Students for a Democratic Society. We had different people that would come in.
Jerry Rubin.
And Jerry Rubin, and kind of try to stir things up. And in the dorm that I was in, and I told you there was this rotunda, well, a lot of the SDS people would hang out there, and they would say, oh, I flew into Cleveland from New York, and I flew in from Philadelphia, and I'm from California, and we're just here to stir things up and make these students more aware of what's going on. And I'm going, okay, but this isn't your campus. Would you please leave and let us go? But they really did stir up a lot of emotions and a lot of feelings with people. And I think that's probably the motive behind burning down the ROTC building, as well as getting students really riled about Kent State's shooting. So.
Yours?
You want me to go to number 4?
Richard, did you want to answer that question?
Out of the group that have been in the military, any from Vietnam War served? One, sir? So you got the great welcome home, I'm sure. Sir?
His comment was what welcome?
I had a lot of people, a lot of friends of mine that lost their life and returned home to, what they call it, the baby killers, throwing stuff on them. You just didn't wear the uniform when you came home. So worst thing is get that uniform off and get me some civilian clothes. It was terrible. And I hear them stories, and my wife listens to them, and she just can't believe that, how mean people were. It was just that way, you know. And we also took that black eye, not as bad, but for the riots. You know, we did the same thing. We got the same acquaintance going to the stores where we couldn't get something. I meant to get a 12-pack of beer because he wanted it. And nope, we don't sell to you, but he can buy it. So it's hard. It really is.
Were there any long-term changes in your views or actions as a result of being on campus that day?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I had pretty much changed my focus in life to get away from these wackos that are on this campus. And of course, I've been goofing around for, it took me 7 years to get out and get my bachelor's. So anyway, I said, I'm getting out of here, and so I started buckling down, and I actually came back to campus to start summer quarter on June 20th, following the May 1st shootings. So I went back because I wanted out. I was done. I needed to get money in my pocket. I was broke as hell. And I said, I'm out of here. So, and I kind of flushed everything. That's it.
Wow.
Nobody asked me a question, so.
I think that I'm probably more open to other people's opinions, and I try to do a better job listening and communicating than before. I was a pretty naive little country girl when I went to Kent, and you grow up pretty fast just going to college, and then having this incident kind of on top of it. I tend to ask more questions because of it, and certainly I have opinions, but I have learned that you really have to listen, and you listen beyond the words to really know what people are saying and what they are thinking and what their views really are. Kind of calmed me down a little bit and made me think a little bit broader and looking more at the big picture and how things affect the big picture.
How did the university and the student body recover and move forward?
Well, first thing they did was send everybody home. So, and with that, I don't know what you did for classes, but I got to take a.
Hand you my mic.
Okay.
You keep looking.
Oh, I bet that's right. In my situation, of course, they sent us home, and we had choices with our classes. We could either drop the class, we could take it pass-fail, we could take it for a grade. I got to take music appreciation without being able to listen to the music. That was real exciting. I did tennis by mail. That was fun too. And then the other one I remember is a home furnishings and architectural class. And in that class, the prof invited us to her house in Akron, and those of us that weren't close enough to drive every day for 5 days stayed at her house with her and with her children and her husband, and we had class every day from like 10 to 4 or whatever, so that we could do this project and get a grade at the end. So that one I did take. So, but that was the first thing. But certainly there's been a lot of celebration or memory kinds of things each and every year. You want to address some of those?
Me?
Yes.
I guess the question kind of is, what was the student body like? Mm-hmm. Is that right, Vickie? Okay. When I went back June 20th, it was kind of sparse. The summer session is less attended than normal. But there was a sense of family on campus. I mean, everybody kind of was stuck together because we were all in the same boat. And we had guarded opinions of everything, kind of guarded. We didn't want to, piss somebody off or, we just didn't want to do that. We kind of held things down. And the status quo kind of resumed, except there weren't any guards standing outside of our classroom. I didn't mention that. The differential calculus, come on, there was a guard in front of the door.
Who would want to go there?
Yeah, who would want to go to a class like that?
Yeah.
Especially not me. Oh, one good thing is that was my first and only 4-point on that quarter.
So
I got
did
an A
you-
in every class.
I was going to say, did you take one class, right?
It was more than one that time.
Oh, okay.
So, looking back, can you hear me? Okay. Looking back, how do you think the events of May 4th have shaped history?
Me? All right, here we go. I'm going to make notes here. Wackos still make stupid moves. Stupid because they don't think beyond today. You got to start thinking tomorrow, the next day, the future. Mr. Rhodes did something really stupid. And then it cascaded down through other officials and other leaders. And I have noted here, I said, make sure Richard talks about the riot baton. He already did, which is great. So how did it shape history? I don't know. Most of you folks, did you know about it? How old were you? Yeah. Some of you, Mimi was 8 years old. Mm-hmm. She kind of knew something. Vickie.
I was not born.
She was not
But
around.
I do remember. I did a lot of research leading up to this, and I learned a lot having coffee with you. But I didn't know all the details. But I know it happened. As I was on my college search, I think that's part of the things that come up as you're looking to go to college. Oh, this happened, and I'm from Cleveland. So that's close to Kent. I often went to Kent on the weekends in high school. And so I knew about it. There's a faculty member, she teaches here. She said that she was in the admissions department when she went to school at Kent, and she said everything is still honored that day. The students that lost their lives, there's parking spots that you still don't park in those spots. You walk by a pergola, and there's still a bullet hole. So the campus didn't cover it up or anything like that. So I think that's important to note as well, that it's still something that not necessarily celebrated, but remembered every year still to this day at Kent State.
There was some movement a few years afterwards. They were going to kind of plow it under and build a huge building. And that didn't go over. That didn't go over at all. If some of you remember that, they tried to do a building on top, and it was violent and relaxing. Vickie, I have to ask you. You said you thought maybe your mom went to Kent.
1972, so it was after, that
Okay.
she...
You did look that up.
Yeah,
Good.
yeah. What lessons do you think should be learned from the Kent State shootings?
Well, the first thing I would say is violence can break out anywhere, anytime, when you least expect it. As students, we never thought that there were real bullets. It was kind of like, they're not going to shoot us. We're the same age bracket. Why would they do that? But things happen that are very unexpected, and you just have to make sure that you're real diligent about where you are and what you're doing and how this affects other people. Richard?
I'm sorry.
Did you have anything?
No.
Anything?
No.
John does, I know.
John,
Good. He's throwing it to me now. All right.
go on.
I don't know what to say. Shit. I'm on the wrong page anyway. There we go. what should be learned from Kent State is that people make dumb decisions and based on bad information. Make sure you got all the facts straight before you do something. It was, like James Michener said, it was a driverless car running downhill. I can't imagine a way to stop the whole program unless Rhodes would have said, all right, I want guard off campus. That would have been the only way that I think we could have turned it around. But other than that, I mean, imagine Tiffin University here, or Heidelberg, and you have helicopters going around shining lights on the campus. You have tanks, jeeps, all kinds of stuff parked on the campus. Come on, you know, what in the heck is in your brain? So, anyway, I think that people would understand that the amount of force that you use to quell a situation should be equal to the amount of force that's in the situation. So this was an over force, right? And the live ammo, I think me and a couple other hunters knew what was in their guns, but not everybody didn't know that these were very lethal firearms that they had. So, I'm done.
How do you feel about the way Kent State is remembered today? Do you feel it is positively remembered?
All right.
Go, John.
How's it?
I'll think about
Okay.
it.
How's it remembered? A lot of people don't even know about it. There's a lot of people don't know about it. I really don't talk to it about it unless it is brought up. They ask me where I go to college, and I'd say Kent State, and I'd look at them because I'm a sales guy. I'd look and see what kind of reaction I was getting. And then I might say, they might respond, oh yeah, that place where the shootings were. And I said, my response would be, yes, I was there. And then we either start a conversation or we wouldn't. You know, it's up to them to continue. So I really never talked much about it unless I was prodded. So how is it remembered? Most people don't understand it. You guys in this room now see it, okay?
What would you like future generations to understand about that day? You kind of hit on this a little bit, but anything else you want to include?
Well, I would like to think that they would never forget that some way, you know, they say history repeats itself, and let's hope that never, ever, ever happens with this. But yet, to ensure that, I think we need to continue to put it in front of people and making people realize the impact that this had on people's lives, and how many people died and how families were really affected by the fact that all of these students were wrapped up in something that was really out of their control. I just hope we never forget what happened that day.
I don't think you can pull it off. I don't think if you went onto and not Kent State, we went into any college, and you decided, or the governor decided, let's put the guard in there or put somebody else in there, and we're going to go after these kids, and I don't think it would ever happen. There's so many safety valves built into it now, which we had zero back in the day. So those are not there. Today they are. We can, like John says, if we only knew what 2020 would be fine. Just did it happen? It did. It's over with. All of us in the room know that. Can you fix it? No. Just make sure that the safety valves are all put in, and I think those are all there. I don't think you'll ever find a governor right now that say, oh, let's go take off after this university and we'll take care of that. Ain't gonna happen.
And I think the universities are more prepared too.
Yep.
You know, they have put in more safety valves, as you talk about, to prevent some of the some of the things that had led up to the Kent State shooting.
Is there anything else about your experience that you think is important to share before I ask a question to the audience?
I do have something. I don't know who said it, but I'm reading a lot of history books now. The Panama Canal comes to mind, and so on and so forth, different things about pioneers in early America. Brenda and I just got back from a Lewis and Clark trip down the Columbia River, which was just fabulous. But anyway, somebody said, and I don't know who, and I can't give credit for it, it's not mine, they said, learn history so you don't repeat it. I don't know who said it, but I think it's a great idea. So, pay attention to what the heck happened. I had my eyes open really wide when I found out the amount of corruption and stuff that went on in France when they first attempted to do the Panama Canal. If you've ever read books on it, there was tremendous corruption in France. And I don't think anybody got hung, but everybody got caught. So, and that was before the United States moved in and started taking over, where there was no corruption, I think. All right. When you make a decision to do something, you get unintended results sometimes if you don't make the decision based on future facts. That's the important thing that I think I got out of this. Somebody make a stupid decision, they didn't think about what was going to happen next, and if you can't think in advance, you're going to have real difficulties, you know. It's like in my work experience, I'd had crews working up in the middle of nowhere in the air, and would I send a youngster up there that was afraid of heights? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't, because I knew there would be consequences if he came down, you know. So we called it stepping in the hole. If you guys, any iron workers out there, you know, stepping in the hole means you're down for the count. So anyway, that's the thing that I'd like to share. There's other things too, but we'll see what kind of questions we get, right?
So I have a question for the audience. This was brought to me, Terry, actually. This is Terry's question. Was anybody else at another campus that had an experience that they would like to share? So we know this happened on May 4th at Kent State University, but we know there are other campuses that also had things that happened as a result or during this time frame. So was anybody else willing to share around this time as well? Yeah. I'll walk it over to you. We'll go here and then we'll go back a row, okay?
Thank you. I was a freshman at Ohio State starting in 1969. So I was on campus that week of May. And our campus looked very much like the shots I've seen from Kent State. The National Guard came in, it was frightening. But I should preface this by saying, I remember the whole year, right from the beginning, as a time of protest. There were constantly protests going on campus, peaceful, civil rights, a lot about the war in Vietnam, equal rights for women. It just became sort of commonplace, I think, I felt. However, this became very different and much more frightening. We had 6 p.m. curfews. There was tear gas all over. You couldn't go outside the dorm without, it burned your eyes. People in class, and I feel like Doris said, there were a lot of people from out of town that were not students that were leading a lot of the more radical protests. And they would yell things at us as we'd be walking by to class. Get involved, what good is your freedom? You have to fight for it and say what's on your mind. And people with guns, unfortunately, the students were not very nice to the National Guard when they came. It was just something bad was going to happen, and it could have happened on our campus as easily as it did on yours, unfortunately. I do remember my parents watching on the news and seeing how bad things were at Ohio State, and saying, "You've got to come home." And I wanted to wait until the university made a decision, because I didn't. Our classes at that time went into June, so we had probably 6 weeks of classes left. They sent us home, and we didn't know if we were coming back or not. So I remember packing up before I left. And then we were given the option to take pass-fail classes. You could come back and take an exam if you weren't happy with your grade, or take the grade you were going to get, drop a course. Yeah, it was a time I'll never forget. And going back in the fall was difficult, but I don't remember any not helicopters, National Guard, or anything at the beginning of the next year. Thanks.
Thank you for sharing.
I was at Ohio State, and it was my freshman year, and I lived in a dorm called Mack Hall, and I believe it was the oldest dorm on campus. And I remember there was a platoon of National Guard in front of the dorm, and we also had, I don't know why or when it was built, but they had a gate that they could close to the campus, because Mack Hall was next to 11th Avenue, and I think that's where off campus apartments were, for students. But I remember, with the Mack Hall, I can't remember if we just had fans, like ceiling fans. There was no air conditioning. I remember it was a hot day, warm day. We had our windows open. I believe there were screens in the windows. And the platoon of National Guard, they were throwing tear gas at the students that were approaching them. And that tear gas also came into our dorms too. So it was very uncomfortable having that, happen to you. And I also remember there was a curfew. I remember the helicopters flying over campus, and I went with a couple of the students or friends of mine from the dorm. We went over to the Oval, and we took small buckets of water with sponges, because those students were tear gassed too, and just to make it more comfortable, by using the sponges with the water, to clear out their eyes or the face. And that's pretty much the recollection that I remember. But one more thing, I think our protest was because of the administration and the students. There was disagreements about something. I don't remember it being because of the Vietnam War, why the protest all started, but there was a curfew, and I don't remember leaving campus, but that's my recollection.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else? Oh. You got that, Terry? Thank you.
I was a freshman at Miami, and when we heard about the Kent State things, I think that was at noon, right? And Miami's reaction was to have every student that night go to a toilet at 6 p.m. and flush it. And I was in a chemistry lab, so I didn't participate. However, everyone else did, and at 6 o'clock, big flush-in occurred and put the whole town out of water. So they sent us home for a week. You were there?
Hello.
Anybody else over here?
Thank you for sharing that. Does anybody have anything? Oh, one more. Okay.
Richard, you mentioned that there was very intensive riot control training after the event at Kent State. Was there any before that, or was that a brand new thing?
None.
Thank you.
I have some over here.
I was in Thailand in high school. My father was in the service, and I went to the international school, and the Kent State divided our campus really, really strongly. Unfortunately, it was divided between the students, the kids whose parents were in the military, and the people that were there whose parents weren't in the military. It really, really divided the classes. And then I went to college at the University of Texas the next year, and I was in Air Force ROTC, and we were supposed to wear our uniform one day a week. At the beginning of the semester, we had to show which professors we had, and if we had certain professors, we didn't wear our uniform to their class because they were going to fail us. That's how strong the anti-war feeling had become.
My two roommates that were in ROTC, they would get in their car, drive to the ROTC building, they had to be in uniform, just right, and they would do their class. And then when they were done with their class, they'd race back to the room, take their uniform off, put their regular clothes on, and then go back to their next class, because it was as bad as Richard was saying. So,
Okay, I want to be. Okay, go ahead.
Scanning the articles up there,
We will email these to everybody too.
I know that the bullets were fired by the National Guard, but it seemed like the newspaper articles were slanted, that the students were basically going about their own business, and that the National Guard just chose to take the violent route.
Richard and I talked about his uniform. He showed me his what'd you call it, a can? The thing on top? The hat?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there was a liner.
Yeah, you had a helmet liner.
Yeah, helmet.
But everybody was in steel pots.
Steel pots, that's the word he used. And then they wore, if you saw the pictures, they all had gas masks on. Did you see the size of the holes? So if you are out there and you're looking through a window like this, you have no peripheral vision.
None.
None at all. Plus, it's hot. Well, it was warm that day. And you're wearing full uniform. You're carrying about an 8 or 9 pound M1 Garand with probably, I saw maybe 3 clips at the max. So they might have had 20, maybe 30 rounds of ammo on them each. So they're marching through, and people are yelling at you and screaming at you, waving flags at you. Now, there was some misconception about rocks and bricks being thrown. There were no bricks in that area unless they brought them in. There were little pebbles, so they probably were throwing pebbles, but they were not any massive pieces of bricks or rocks, okay? I know that for a fact. Don't believe what you hear. So there were stones being thrown, I'm sure, maybe twigs from something being fall. Anyway.
And again, as John was saying, it's very hard for you to understand, to put this steel pot in the gas mask. I tried to do it to the wife, she turned me down. It's here, put this, it'll just take a minute. No. These kids are out there. I was one of them. You're looking 18, 19-year-olds, we knew everything. And you put them in that situation, and everything becomes, tight, because you're also shoulder to shoulder, and these guys are shoulder to shoulder, and they're pointing guns, and Billy Bob's throwing all kinds of stuff at you. You can't have them, and their officers who's in charge of them is in back of them, not in front of them. He's in back yelling out orders of what's going on, move to the left, move to the right, forward, hard. And so this young kid's got a gun in there and somebody hit him with an apple or whatever, and he's ready. And now his hand's on the trigger. So all it takes John to do is, oh, boom.
Yep.
We don't know who said fire. They never told anybody that. I don't think it had come up anywhere to see who told them or who told them to say ceasefire. Obviously, there wasn't anybody saying ceasefire because they were on the run.
There was a General Canterbury that ran out in front and said, ceasefire, ceasefire. Okay, and that's what stopped the shooting. But then the students got pissed. They were mad. And the students started coming at the guard in mass because all their 14 people were screwed up on the ground, bloody. So they started coming at him. And this General Canterbury did stop it, but we think that he gave the original order. So, but it's all been kind of thing just like Kennedy's shooting, you know. You don't understand the real true things. Anyway, so it did stop. Where are we at in time?
It's time to go.
Oh. All right.
So let's give everybody a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you to those that shared their stories as well. We make sure you fill out your session forms. We would love to have your feedback. A reminder to pick up the information on the tech tips for seniors. The list of the classes are on there. So next week is cutting the cable cord. So if you're interested in getting rid of cable and you want to get YouTube TV or something else, we have an expert coming in to show you how to do that and to save money. We also have the intergenerational book club. So if you're interested in that, please pick that up as well. And now, enjoy lunch. Next week is our session with Mike Gilbert, Tales from the Great Black Swamp, and Renee Scalata from the Black Swamp Conservancy. So I hope everybody has a great weekend, and thank you so much.